it's my algorithm, but I see Shiloh and Shedeur more than I've ever seen any undrafted guy or fifth round guy on social media in the history of Instagram, Threads, Twitter, X, whatever it is. Like, those dudes are everywhere. And they caught some of Deion's strays, right? Deion had a level of greatness that was untouchable. Right? Deion could say, yeah, I'm not interviewing with these people because I'm not going to be there in the draft. Deion could say, hey, I already ran 140. I ain't effing with no more of this testing because y'all already know I'm top 5 and it ain't tripping. Watch the film, know who I am. That's the difference between, I think, Deion and who his kids were. And then I think Deion's approach to it made other people, Deion's fame, right? Deion's success, Deion's ability to one day be a head coach in the league. Also, Deion's ability and what he's done in navigating the present, right? When we talk about college of his children and now going into the pros, this is the first thing he couldn't control. And they were.
You believe you understand what actually transpired during Shedeur Sanders' drafting process. Reconsider. The NFL world has been rocked by Ryan Clark's recent bombshell. It also has nothing to do with Shedeur's pocket presence or arm strength. Clark claims that Coach Prime was the target of a planned kill job that used his son as a weapon. The guy who was in charge of everything during Deion's illustrious career, from his playing days to his success as a coach, found himself totally helpless for the first time. You'll see why Coach Prime stated those 3 words that made every father shudder as Ryan Clark explains how Deion's peers used his own son as a weapon against him. It was painful. I've been covering this leak for years, and I've never witnessed anything like what occurred to Shedeur Sanders during the selection process. But now that I've heard Ryan Clark's breakdown, it all makes sense. This has nothing to do with evaluating football. Under the cover of draft study, this was personal warfare. Allow me to depict what actually transpired. I take it you have Coach Prime? The man who, in terms of professional athletics, literally redefined confidence. Deion Sanders used to be able to enter any room during his playing career and declare, I'm not doing your little workout because y'all already know I'm top 5. It's not even close. He possessed that untouchable greatness in which he was in charge of the story, the method, and everything. This is where it becomes twisted, though. Ryan Clark claims that some members of the league, who have witnessed Deion's achievements, boldness, and self-assurance, have been waiting for the one opportunity to exact revenge on him. And when his kid joined the draft, it happened. Take a moment to consider this. In college, Shedeur Sanders had 6 different coordinators, yet he consistently improved. At Jackson State, the young player put up numbers despite playing behind offensive lines that were unable to defend the paperback. Later, he advanced to Power 5 competition at Colorado. His output is self-explanatory. However, none of that mattered throughout the drafting process. What did we hear instead? Concerns regarding his demeanor, character, and media claims about his lack of preparation.
So many things about Shedeur during the draft process were character, personality. All these things that we can't prove on the outside, right? We were able to watch
the accounts of his donning headphones. Everything that was both unproven and unrefutable. Ryan Clark was able to see straight through it. Every report contained information that we were unable to dispute. Clark also noted that people were unable to substantiate this. It's not a coincidence. That's tactics. You target the character when you are unable to criticize the movie or the statistics. You start murmurs, which turn into rumors, which turn into issues that NFL teams have to look into right away. Here's the worst part, though. This wasn't even about Shedeur, Clark says. The child was merely incidental. Shedeur is not at all the intended objective. Clark clarified that in order to obtain a Coach Prime, they are exploiting what they are saying about Shedeur Sanders and the tale surrounding him. Can you picture that? Using a person's son or child as a weapon to make amends with the father. That is wicked on a level that transcends football games. And you know what's absurd? It was successful. Deion Sanders was in an uncontrollable scenario for the first time in his illustrious career.
How does that make you feel when you see your colleagues or your peers going in on you, man? Like, how does that make you feel?
No idea, man. You have no idea. We've always been in front of the camera, so they know how to navigate. They know how to handle themselves. Yeah. And you're not gonna catch them in no foolery and no mess. You're not. When you sit up there and say something like he went in a meeting unprepared, like, dude, Shedeur Sanders, who's had 6 different coordinators, who has still functioned and went up, leveled up every time we brought somebody new in, and you're gonna tell me
every situation.
You're gonna tell me he had on headphones.
So you a dog, your kid's a dog, and dogs gonna always rise to the top. You know what I mean? That's what I believe. You know what I mean?
It did hurt. The Bible says God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. So it was some foolish stuff that went on, but you know what? That gave them something.
During his playing career, this man dictated terms to NFL organizations. A man who created a coaching empire and dominated all the stories surrounding his programs. However, he was helpless to shield his kid from character assassination. Ryan Clark did a great job of breaking everything down. They said, "I got you now," because this was the first item he was unable to manage. Deion seemed unbeatable for decades, but his peers eventually saw an opening and seized it. The most devastating aspect. Coach Prime was fully aware of the situation. When he said, "It did hurt," you could hear the anguish in his voice during that emotional interview. This has nothing to do with money or draft status. In this story, a parent witnesses his son being dragged through the dirt for transgressions he did not commit. "I am unable to see that." Deion remarked, "I can't see the next level," in reference to the stories and speculations being spread. "A few individuals who might have made fun of my children were worried that I might leave. The shots originated there." Consider that admission. Coach Prime essentially acknowledged that some members of the league were so intimidated by the prospect of him coaching in the NFL that they pursued his kids in advance. That's fear, not competitiveness. Here's something about the entire issue really irritates me. Ryan Clark noted that Coach Prime was most likely hurt by Chris Carter. Why? Carter was meant to be a peer, someone from his time who was familiar with the grind and the game. Rather, Carter was publicly disparaging Shedeur, which fueled the campaign of character assassination. In the meantime, Shedeur was being defended and praised by other legends from that era, such as Michael Irvin and Keshawn Johnson. The distinction was that Deion's success and possible NFL future did not pose a danger to those players. However, Ryan Clark made another insightful point, so let's discuss what this entire sabotage attempt really achieved. Perhaps it's my algorithm, but I see Shiloh and Shedeur more on social media than any undrafted or fifth-round player in the history of Instagram threads, Twitter X, or anything else. Do you understand what that implies? The hate campaign was a huge failure. They actually made Shedeur more well-known, prominent, and talked about than any fifth-round selection in recent memory by attempting to undermine him. Compared to several quarterbacks selected in the first round, the kids had a greater social media presence. He now has a genuine opportunity in Cleveland. The future is not Joe Flacco. Kenny Pickett is not the solution. Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel will compete for that quarterback spot. Additionally, Shedeur had to cope with character attacks while playing behind awful offensive lines after everything he had to go through at the draft. Do you believe he will be intimidated by a training camp competition? What the sabotage campaign overlooked is as follows. They produced a monster. Every insult, character query, and worry about his personality just served to stoke his rage. He now has something to prove to everyone who has attempted to undermine him. Ryan Clark's description of Deion's pain stemming from his constant ability to care for his children as a father and his slight sense that part of this is due to me and I can't take it away from them was spot on. We have never witnessed a more human moment from Coach Prime than that. Acknowledging that his son may have been a target because of his achievements. However, you know what? Deion's greatness came from the same DNA. The same swagger and self-assurance that so intimidated his contemporaries. Shedeur has all of that as well. The difference is that, thanks to everyone who attempted to undermine his draft stock, he now has an extra chip on his shoulder. The child performed despite going through 6 different coordinators. Every time the level of competition rose, he improved. Compared to quarterbacks who had endless time behind top-tier offensive lines, he processed the game more quickly. He was still selected by an NFL team despite all the character assassination, rumors, and whispers. Clark also made a very important point. His arm is underappreciated, in my opinion. I believe you are aware that Shedeur's father overshadowed any inquiries you might have about him. The family name had a negative impact on the evaluation. Here's where we are right now and the NFL. Shedeur Sanders is prepared to disprove all skeptics. When it comes to personal grudges, Coach Prime has seen behind the scenes of how the league actually functions. Furthermore, Ryan Clark just revealed the entire scheme for what it was, a well-planned character assassination masquerading as draft critique. What will happen when Shedeur starts playing in Cleveland is the current question. What happens if all of those character issues turn out to be pure fiction? What happens when the purportedly unprepared child begins to produce plays that his detractors were never able to? Because allow me to share something with you. Shedeur Sanders has more motivation than any rookie quarterback in recent memory given everything this young man went through, including witnessing his father suffer for the first time in his illustrious career after being used as a weapon in older men's petty feuds. His draft stock was expected to be destroyed by the sabotage campaign. Rather, it produced a tale of retaliation that will soon unfold on NFL Sundays. I'm eager to see how this chapter concludes, but I'm not sure about the rest of you. What are your thoughts? Was Coach Prime the target of a well-planned attack, or am I exaggerating the situation? More significantly, is Shedeur going to make all of his detractors in Cleveland appear foolish? This narrative is far from finished, so please share your ideas in the comments. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and enable notifications if you want to keep up with all the drama and watch how this revenge tour unfolds. You won't want to miss the next development in this story, I promise.